Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Haggai, which Haggai, being one of the prophets along with Zechariah, at this point in time, we have already covered the beginnings, right, of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, right, under Nebuchadnezzar II. When they came, they besieged Jerusalem and took captives, right? So we know Daniel was over there around that time and all of that. So we've not passed that time. We've passed the fall of the Babylonian Empire, and at this point in time, the Persians, or the Achaemenid Empire, is what's in rulership right now, and in particular Darius the king. So right before this time, actually, you had the commandment that was given by Cyrus, and then of course, to go back and rebuild the temple, which we did, right? We went back, we started building. However, during the reign of Cambyses II and Bardia, that building was halted, right? So right around the time of Haggai, I know when we read and we covered in the book of Ezra, we went through the whole sequence where we successfully built the temple and all that good stuff, right? But the book of Haggai right here takes place somewhere in the middle, right? So at this point, we started building the temple, but we didn't finish because we were halted, right? Those Persian kings at the time, right, basically listened to the governors of these regions near us, and they halted us from building the temple. So now in the reign of Darius, the Lord puts the spirit upon Haggai and Zechariah to basically go and for lack of better words, put fire under our asses to go ahead and get back to building and finish building the temple. Because for a period of time, since we weren't allowed to do it, we sort of just went back to just building, our houses and then all those kinds of things. So that's pretty much what we cover here in the book of Haggai, where the Lord is talking to Jerusalem or Israel through Haggai, letting them know, hey, it's not acceptable that you guys are doing your own thing. Meanwhile, my temple is over here and it's not even built. Right? What's going on? So this is the book of Haggai, chapter 1, verse 1. Haggai begins temple building. In the second year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the first day of the month, came the word of the Lord Yahweh by Haggai the prophet unto Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest, saying. Now before we carry on, I just want to take a look here, if this will load. If not, then we can just, it's fine, we can keep going. Verse 2, Thus speaketh the Lord Yahweh of hosts, saying, This people say, the time is not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. So this is the word that came to Haggai, and the Lord is saying, basically the Israelites at the time are now of the mindset that maybe it's not time to build the Lord's temple. Maybe that's why he allowed he didn't put the spirit upon these kings to allow us to continue building. Maybe that's why he had it be halted. Verse 3, Then came the word of the Lord Yahweh by Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste? And this house is referring to the temple, right? So is it time for you to have your houses built back up and everything set up? Meanwhile, the Lord's house is just lying waste, is incomplete. Now therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Ye have sown much, and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Now remember that it was some years from when we were stopped from building the temple up until we were given permission again to continue building. So some time had passed from after we had stopped the building to this time that Haggai is giving this message here. So it says here, ye have sown much and bring in little. And when you sow, that's where you plant, right? Just like husbandry, for example, but you know the process, right? You break up the earth, you plant the seeds, you water it, so on and so forth. So when you sow, that's what you do, you're planting. And as Haggai is saying here, via the words of the Lord, consider your ways. Have you not noticed that you sow much, right? You have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. So what was Haggai really saying here? Obviously, this is not necessarily literal, right? In the sense that when you put on clothes, yeah, it's gonna warm you up. That's why you put it on, right? When you eat, eventually you'll get full. When you drink, yeah, eventually you'll get full. But here, it's on a higher level. What it means is you're not satisfied. You're not getting enough. You're constantly lacking. You're constantly, in need, even though you're putting in work and you're doing all of these things. Verse 7, and this is something that is, a byproduct, if not a direct correlation of the curses, right, that the Lord had put upon us. But at this point, as we're going to continue to read, verse 7, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. See, so stop and think for a second. Have you not noticed, right, the situation that you're in? Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord. So the Lord says, enough with this chilling around. Get up, go get the materials, and come and continue the building. Verse 9, ye looked for much, and lo, it came to little. And when ye brought it home, I did blow upon it. Why, saith the Lord of hosts? Because of mine house that is waste, and ye run every man onto his own house. So the Lord is saying, I'm making life harder for you, where you sow, but you bring in little, you drink, but you're not filled. You're constantly in need. You're living a hard life. Okay, right? As it says here, you searched, right? You searched for much, and lo, you came with little. And when you brought it home, I blew upon it. Basically meaning that the things that you work for, the Lord, basically would have it to where you don't get the fullness of it. And he's saying, I'm doing this because you've left my temple waste. But everybody's good. Everybody's building their houses and getting settled and doing all of that stuff. Verse 10, therefore the heaven is over you, or the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit, which is metaphorical for, having a lack of crops, like a lack of, in order to have good crops, you need to have good rain. You need to have good soil. You need to have the earth, it needs to yield, its best to you. Now, when the Lord said, as a matter of fact, let's see if we can find that. Forget which book it was. I know it was in the Torah though. Let's see, the latter rain. There you go. Let's check Deuteronomy chapter 11. Yeah, here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse. Yeah, here we go. This is perfect. Verse 10. And this was prior to going into the land. I believe this was Moses. In majority of the chapters in Deuteronomy is really Moses admonishing Israel, because the Lord had let him know that he wouldn't be able to go past the other side of Jordan into the promised land, right, into that other half. So he was basically giving them that, almost like that final admonishment, before they continued on. Now in verse 10, right, it says here, for the land whither thou goest to possess it, which is talking about the land of Canaan, is not as the land of Egypt, because we had just came from Egypt, right? We were dwelling in Egypt for a while. From whence ye came out, where thou sowest thy seed, and waterest it with thy foot, as a garden of herbs. Now remember, in Egypt, because of you had this body of water like the Nile, and there are different irrigation systems and all of that. So growing crops wouldn't be as difficult there, because either the soil would be more fertile. You had the water source right there. You had different mechanisms that they used. So it wouldn't be as, problematic. But what they're being told here is the land you're going to now, the land of Canaan, is not like that one. Verse 11, but the land whither ye go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven. Meaning you need rain. You don't have this like giant, you don't have the luxury of like what you had in Egypt. In this land, you're going to need that rain if you want to have good crops, if you want to be able to have a good season, a good harvest. Verse 12, a land which the Lord Yahweh thy God careth for, the eyes of the Lord Yahweh are always upon it, from the beginning of the year even unto the end of the year. And it shall come to pass, if ye shall hearken diligently unto my commandments, which I command you this day, to love the Lord Yahweh your God, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, that I will give you the rain of your land in his due season. This is why the Lord said his eyes are upon it, because in order for you to be able to sustain yourself in a land like that, which doesn't have the luxury of like the land of Egypt, the Lord has to be, gracious unto you and grant you that rain and that in the due season, so that you can have a good, successful planting and harvest and all of that. And this is why it was so easy for the Lord to punish us often with famine. Because if he stopped the water from coming, there you're done. Okay. Verse 14, that I will give you the rain of your land in his due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and thy wine and thine oil. Now, in like certain places, right, even in like places like, in the East, for example, not everywhere is like America, where you have 4 seasons, right? Like winter and spring and summer and fall and all of that. And there's some parts of the world where you just have 2 seasons, the raining season and then the dry season. So in this case, when the Lord talks about the first rain and the latter rain, he doesn't mean like, okay, on the first day of the year, I'm going to make it rain and then that's it, call it a day. And then maybe like close to the last day of the year. No, he means for a certain season. It would be a season where you can gain that, that rain and the earth would be in a condition needed for you to do your planting and all of that. And that way you could then have your harvest. So roughly about like 2 times a year. Okay. As it says, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and thy wine and thine oil. And I will send grass in thy fields for thy cattle, that thou mayest eat and be full. See, and then, actually, let me read a little bit more. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. And then the Lord Yahweh's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven. See, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, and lest ye perish quickly from off the good land which the Lord Yahweh giveth you. So that's the main point that I wanted to cover right there, which is that because of the region which we dwelt in, we depended on the Lord ultimately to send us that rain so that we could survive. We could, grow the crops, we could have food for our cattle and all of that. So going back to the book of Haggai, what the Lord was doing, right, back in verse 10, as he says, therefore the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit. So the Lord was almost basically shutting up that rain and the fruitfulness of the land, because once again, Israel at this point in time, instead of building the Lord's temple, they were actually just doing their own thing. Verse 11, and I called for a drought upon the land, and upon the mountains, and upon the corn, and upon the new wine, and upon the oil, and upon that which the ground bringeth forth, and upon men, and upon cattle, and upon all the labor of the hands, because majority of the labor would depend upon having that good soil, that good rain. When you have one that is plowing, he's breaking up the earth, he's planting the seeds, but he needs that rain, he needs that water. Okay, if you have a shepherd that is going to take the cattle out to graze, what are they going to graze on? They need food, they need grass, they need, you know, the herbs of the field. But how the herbs grow if there's no rain? See, verse 12. Then Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and Joshua the son of Josedek the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of the Lord their God, and the words of Haggai the prophet, as the Lord Yahweh their God had sent him. And the people did fear before the Lord Yahweh. Now, keep in mind that Haggai, like we mentioned before, was contemporaries with Zechariah. So Zechariah was also here at this time, motivating the people via the words of the Lord to go back and continue the building. See, so this was the message the Lord sent Haggai to go and tell them and say, this is why he said, consider. There's a reason why you're having a hard time with your crops. There's a reason why you're not getting enough. Likening it onto eating and not being full, or being having clothes but not being warm. It's because the Lord is trying to direct you to the fact that you haven't built his temple, and you have to go ahead and finish that. I mean, that was what the main decree was for anyway. So they took heed, right? As it says here, they feared the Lord. Verse 13, then spake Haggai the Lord's messenger in the Lord, Then spake Haggai the Lord's messenger in the Lord's message unto the people, saying, I am with you, saith the Lord Yahweh. And the Lord stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua the son of Josedek the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people, and they came and did work in the house of the Lord Yahweh of hosts their God. So the Lord stirred up that spirit within them, meaning like they got you know, amped up. They're ready. They were like, all right, you know what, you're right, let's do it. And they went back, and then they continued putting in that work and built the temple of the Lord. Verse 15, in the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king. So that brings us to the end of the book of Haggai, the 1st chapter. Just a bit of context as to, you know, what's going on around this time, what is the purpose, you know, and you know, at least at this point in time, what was the message, right, that the Lord was given? Okay, so Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.